The time, especially out of your morning, to join us today. My name is AJ Ali, and I'll be facilitating today's tech setup walkthrough. We will go ahead and start in probably a minute or two, so feel free if you need to refill that cup of coffee, grab a quick snack, go ahead and get comfortable. We will also take a moment to review our webinar etiquette for today. We will be fielding questions through the QA, especially as we go through our walkthrough. We do want to make sure that our QA section is working, so if you have a moment, feel free to go ahead and drop in where you're joining us from. Myself, I am based out of Richmond, Virginia. All right. Amazing. See New Jersey, Kentucky. Love seeing folks from all over. Again, thank you all for taking the time out of your morning. It's at the 2 minute mark right now. We'll go ahead and start in approximately one more minute. LA. Oh, wow. I know it's super early, especially 8 a.m. right there. Thanks for joining. All right. Monterey as well. Awesome. All right. It looks like I see a few folks still joining or trickling in. The good thing is, if you have registered for today's session, you will receive a recording of this tomorrow around the same time. But let's go ahead and get started. So for today, we will go ahead and review first your launch team here at Monograph. So myself, my name is AJ Ali, pictured here. And aside from myself, you may be working with either my colleagues, Kenny, Kelsey, Malik, or Alex. If you're unsure of whom your launch manager is, please refer back to the initial introduction when you were working with one of our product experts or our sales team. Aside from your launch team, we'll dive into the value of our onboarding at Monograph. We'll review the phases of our onboarding structure, and then we'll have a walkthrough for our tech setup, really understanding and focusing how do we navigate, personalize, and build out areas such as our directory. We'll then review what happens next, and if there are still outstanding questions, we'll make sure to have a little bit of time for that before concluding by reviewing the learning resources that are available to us. So first, in terms of the value or why we onboard at Monograph, ultimately we have over 10,000 architects and engineers that use Monograph to not just work smarter, but work faster as well. Our onboarding is designed to provide value as quickly as possible. We find that firms see greater efficiency across the board when it comes to completing your business tasks. That's for not just our tech setup, but when we review building out our projects, and you'll see a little bit later through our staffing. We find that firms are able to achieve greater efficiency with completing our business tasks. We'll also observe that firms, when they use Monograph, can typically not just invoice or bill, but also get paid faster as well. And then, last but not least, making sure that we're coming in under budget and that we're not going over on our projects. I know we cover that, especially when your team is ready to track time. Again, all of these wonderful benefits start with our onboarding. To give a bit of an overview right now, especially for tech setup, this is your first session joining us today. Right now, we're in what's known as our implementation or launch phase. And so right now, we're kind of at the beginning. More than likely, you were introduced perhaps the end of last week or maybe earlier this week. And so right now, we're really starting to lay out our foundation and really set up our system for success. The main goal of our launch phase is that really, at the end of week 3, your account should be ready for the team to start logging time. After our tech setup, we will review what's considered the recommended post work or homework, and then you'll join us. I know we will have some sessions next week before the Thanksgiving holidays, but that is where you'll come back and join us to understand how to build out your projects for success. And then once this looks good, this is where we'll have a team orientation for your firm to join us. Again, we estimate around 3 weeks or 21 days for your launch phase. However, we also understand that with the holidays approaching, end of year, competing priorities, some firms may not be able to adhere to this. If you find yourself perhaps needing longer than 3 weeks to complete your launch phase, please let your launch manager know so we can support your onboarding accordingly. And then after our launch phase, this is where we move into our scale phase of onboarding. The idea with scale is that basically your account will continue to grow or scale out. This is where we'll observe some of the additional features within Monograph, such as our staffing session. That is where you're able to take the information from your projects, especially for your timelines, your budgets, and your role assignments, and it helps with resource management. We also review within the scale phase, understanding how to use the invoicing and consultant section. Very helpful, especially if we want to start billing out of Monograph. And then lastly, we'll conclude by exploring the insights available to us through our reports. We normally estimate that the scale phase takes around 30 days, but at the same time, given the end of year, bandwidth may be something that we may find challenges with right now. Same thing if we're unable to perhaps adhere to this timeline, or if we know we'll need a little bit longer, just let your launch manager know. But now we'll go ahead and start with the walkthrough of our tech setup. During this time, we'll review our dashboard when we first log in. We'll also review just the general navigation within Monograph. We'll observe filling out our directory and why that's key before covering all the areas of settings. During this time, we will certainly be reviewing and addressing any questions that arise within the QA. So let's go ahead and get started with our tech setup. Hi there! For our tech setup walkthrough, we'll be exploring Monograph in the eyes of an administrator through our demo account. To begin, we'll discuss the first thing that you see when you log into Monograph, which is our Insights dashboard. We'll review, starting at the top with business performance. As we go through our settings, we'll review how to set up some of our reports. The intention is that with the Insights dashboard, once projects are added and our team begins to log time, we'll begin to see more insights or information at a firm level. We'll observe business performance metrics at the top, and when scrolling down, you'll be able to see teamwork insights and then a widget underneath around recent projects. This is intended to show the projects you have engaged recently within the system, whether you've logged hours to it, or if you've clicked and viewed on one recently, it's almost a reminder to show which projects you've interacted with prior to your last browsing session. We'll also see a timesheets widget right here in this middle right area of the screen. The timesheets widget is basically a shortcut. I can hover over how many hours have been logged this week or last week, and it'll take me into my weekly timesheet. We'll also see where it's showing assigned tasks. Should you decide to use tasks for your projects with a Monograph, you can see at a glance anything that's overdue, currently due, or what may be lying ahead or due next week. And then lastly, with invoices and bills, once you begin a round of billing, start to mark invoices as open or paid, this is where you'll begin to see some insights of your billing activity at a glance. The first thing, again, that you'll see is the Insights dashboard. This information will also vary for a user depending on their permissions or level of access to Monograph, which we'll review a little bit later. We'll dive into our navigation of the system. Shifting to the top left corner, within this shaded area, we may refer to it as a menu bar or a main menu. One quick tip, as we hover between the dashboard and our main menu, there is a small double arrow between the two. We can click on the double arrow and it just collapses the menu, gives us a little more space or real estate on our screen. Opening it back up, starting at the top left corner underneath our dashboard, we'll see the staffing feature. Staffing is something you will explore in the next phase of your onboarding with your launch manager. The intention with staffing is that this can take the information from your projects once they're built out. It takes our timelines, our budgets, and role assignments, and it can be very helpful for setting a weekly schedule or looking ahead and providing more information for our forecast reports. Staffing is a feature that everyone can see, but your ability to make adjustments or engage with it will vary based on permissions. Again, you'll explore this later in a deep dive session with your launch manager. Underneath, we'll see projects. We'll review projects the next time you join us for our projects walkthrough. Underneath, we'll see time and expenses. And the intention of our launch phase is that once we've completed our tech setup, once projects are built out, your firm will join us for an overview of how to use time and expenses. This is where you'll access your weekly timesheet and have the ability to enter an expense. We also have the time off feature. This is optional and it may be enabled at an admin's discretion. The intention with time off is that within Monograph, you can create policies for different matters, perhaps vacation, sick, bereavement, jury duty, and you can actually set, alongside that policy, a balance to have a formalized request time off process in your system. Time off is a feature that does have to be enabled. If you're interested in learning more, please let your launch manager know, and we're able to send additional information on how to set this up. Underneath, we'll see invoices and bills. You'll also explore invoices and bills in a deep dive session with your launch manager. This is where we'll review suggested practices for perhaps building out a retainer, an invoice for your service fees, or even showing you how to upload consultant or vendor bills into your system. And then underneath, we'll have our reports. To conclude your onboarding, you will have an insight session with your launch manager to review the various reports and areas to get information from Monograph. Below our reports, we'll go ahead and highlight the directory. The directory is one of the post-work items you'll complete after our tech setup today. The intention with the directory is when you click on it, you'll see first our team directory. This is where, as an admin, you're able to manage the team or those who have access to the Monograph system. Within the team directory, we do recommend, next to everyone's name,
you'll see a column over here showing default role. If it's unassigned, you'll want to go ahead and assign a default role to your team member. This is going to be key, especially in instances where if we may need to log project to a time that we're originally assigned to, Monograph will use that default role and billable rate in timesheets. You'll also want to go ahead and you can open up what's referred to as our employee profile. And within the employee profile, you can certainly go ahead, modify your basic information. And when scrolling down, you can also adjust your email notifications here as well. If you'd like to get a summary of the tasks, maybe the insights when logging time or completed phases, you can adjust the email notifications and receive more insights directly from Monograph. You're also able to adjust or set that default role and billable rate for a team member. And below, this is where you'll want to go ahead and provide compensation for each team member. When we refer to compensation in Monograph, you'll have the option you can add either a base salary or an hourly rate. Providing compensation is key because this information will be used in our reports to help produce insights. It helps us give an understanding of our planned or estimated costs. When providing compensation, you also specify how many hours per week do you or a team member work. This will be very helpful, especially for us to leverage a feature such as staffing. Naturally, we understand that compensation is very sensitive information, so by default, only an admin can view, manage, or update compensation info unless a user has specific permission to do so. Again, we'll review our permissions a little bit later towards the end, but rest assured, compensation is confidential within Monograph. You'll also have the option to establish an individual utilization rate for a team member. We may find, based on the role at the firm level, perhaps a principal or an associate, they're involved in other aspects of the business. They not spend as much time on billable work compared to, let's say, a PM or a draftsperson who should be spending the majority of their workload on billable time. When you set an individual utilization rate, this will be helpful when you explore our insights and look at reports such as our team activity. So again, you'll want to come into the directory, make sure that the employee profiles look good for your team. When we click back out, you'll just want to make sure that they have a default role and compensation information provided right here. Next, we'll go ahead and shift at the top left corner to our consultants directory. You'll also want to come in and fill out the consultants, vendors, or sub-consultants that you work with on your projects. You can add either a company or a point of contact. Just select Add Contact at the top right corner purple, and you can quickly add that information as you see fit. One of the benefits of our QuickBooks Online integration is that you have the ability to select and import your active vendors into this space as well. If you use QuickBooks Online, please let your launch manager know, and we can actually send you an on-demand webinar of how to connect and import your consultants and your clients into the space. Same thing, filling out your client directory beforehand. This will be very helpful, especially when we build out projects. So again, you want to come into the directory, fill out that team directory, add or import your consultants or vendors and clients. This will be very helpful for making sure that our projects are set up for success when you join us to start building them. I'll shift back to the team directory and continue our tour of the menu. Underneath, we'll see a search bar. We can click on the search bar, or you can press Command K if you're on a Mac, or Control K if you're on a Windows. The idea with the search bar is if we needed to search, whether it's within our team, our client directory, or if we wanted to quickly shift between our projects without needing to click in and click out, you can do so here through the search bar. We'll see our settings underneath, which we'll dive into in a moment. We'll also observe where it's showing help. At the bottom left corner, it's not showing on our screen, but at the bottom right corner when you're logged into Monograph, there is a chat icon where you can connect with our support team as well. When you click on Help, this will take you to our Learning Center, support.monograph.com. We'll explore this a little bit later today as part of the additional resources and how we can get assistance beyond our webinar series. And lastly, where it's showing what's new. What's new is basically a changelog. It's just showing all of the updates or new features that have been released over time within Monograph. Sometimes this bell icon may fill up, or it may show just a small red alert, basically indicating if there's a new update or release within Monograph. So let's go ahead and actually dive into our settings at the bottom left corner. We open up Settings. We'll be greeted first by the Organization tab. This is where we'll want to go in and start personalizing the information for your firm. You want to go ahead and upload your logo. Be sure to click on Edit at the top right corner within this company info area. So that way, if you needed to adjust any information, you can do so and quickly save it. We'll do the same thing when it comes to adding our firm address, our client email settings. Should we send out invoices from Monograph? This is where we can give a sender name and a reply to address. Maybe that's a general office or specific accounting email address. You'll also be able to adjust regional preferences and where it's showing overhead costs. This is where we encourage, if you click on Learn More, this will give you an explanation of our overhead multiplier. The overhead multiplier is a firm-specific multiplier. This is intended to encompass all of our operating costs. When you click on Learn More, there is actually a calculator we built out. The intention with the overhead multiplier is that this is meant to reflect our annual direct labor that is billed to projects, our annual overhead labor, maybe that's an office or marketing staff, and our annual overhead expenses, such as rent, software, maybe even bonuses. Again, you'll definitely want to click on Learn More and review the overhead multiplier calculator. We generally see firms set this at a range from 1.5 to 2, but again, that can certainly vary. Underneath, where it's showing our working hours per year, this is where we can modify how many working hours we have at the firm level. This is very helpful, especially for teams that have salaried employees. we understand firms may offer a different paid holiday schedule. Some may even have a 4-day work week. And that is where the yearly working hours can be adjusted. To recap, the working hours per year and the overhead costs. This will work alongside compensation information for your team. This is how our reports in Monograph get an understanding of planned or estimated costs. Shifting below, this is where we have the option you can enable or disable the time off feature. And then we can set utilization and realization rate targets for our firm. With the utilization, this is setting the percentage as a firm. How much time are we spending on our billable work? We may see firms start at around 80%. Of course, this may be higher or lower. You also have the option we can extend this firm utilization target to individual level. So if we do not specify a specific rate within the directory, our reports can use this for those employees or team members as well. So you want to go ahead and set that utilization rate. This will be key alongside with the realization. Realization is reflecting the percentage of our billable hours that are actually invoiced to clients. We normally see firms set this a little bit higher, perhaps at 90 to 95%. In a perfect world, ideally, perhaps we would invoice our clients 100% of our billable time, but we may find instances, perhaps in a fixed fee or a contracted job, where there may be billable time worked but not invoiced, depending on what was planned. Again, setting these targets will be key when you explore our Performance tab within Reports. And then below, this is where we have the ability to connect to our online or Monograph payments. This is where you have the ability to send out an invoice from Monograph, and you can determine at the invoice level, do we accept a credit card? Do we accept an ACH payment? Or can we accept both? You'll definitely want to explore and consider connecting to Monograph online payments as part of your invoicing workflow. We're very confident that you'll get paid faster and probably sooner compared to paper checks. If you're interested in learning more about online payments, please let your launch manager know. They have the ability to provide further information. The one thing we will just highlight real quickly is that for any invoices that you issue out, you have the option for any transaction or convenience fees. It is 3% with a credit card, 1% with an ACH bank transfer. You have the option to actually pass that on to your clients. At Monograph, for the first 10 invoices that you send out and process via ACH, we'll cover the fees for you. So we definitely recommend to connect, explore, and add this to your billing workflow. Again, feel free to reach out to your launch manager if you'd like to get more information about setting up online payments. We'll scroll up and shifting to the next tab. This is where we'll find our app defaults. App defaults are the heart of our customizables within Monograph. App defaults is broken down into 3 sections, starting with time tracking. This is where you'll manage or update some of our settings for timesheets. The first setting over here, timesheet locking, this is referring to the grace period. How much time do we give the team to fill out last week's timesheet? You can go ahead and determine how many days and which time specifically. Again, we may find maybe that's a few days, or maybe we keep this a little bit tighter. The choice is yours. You'll also have the option to enable a reminder email. Once your team is within Monograph and logging time, you can actually choose. Do I send out on a specific day of the week? Maybe a reminder to fill out the timesheet. Perhaps this goes out in the middle of the week, perhaps on a Wednesday or Thursday as a reminder, so that way there aren't any surprises come Friday. Underneath, where it's showing timer, this is where you have the option. You can actually decide for our timer. That is this green play button, the far top left corner of the menu. You can decide if the timer is enabled or not. This is something we may find that varies at the firm level. Some folks may decide to use our timer, others may go directly into the timesheets. And you'll see when you join us for our team orientation how the timer works and something to consider. It is a secondary way to add hours in Monograph. Shifting below, we have our overhead and our activity list. Definitely take a look and review these areas. The intention with the overhead list is that this will serve a few purposes. Should you use our time off feature, you can actually create time off policies that are associated with some of these overhead categories. Perhaps paid time off, holiday, or a sick leave. We also find the overhead list used for non-project or internal work. I have a few examples here, such as business development, RFP, or even a weekly kickoff. You have the ability, you can modify, remove, or create new overhead items. What we'll often find is that if it's a matter of perhaps leaving or stepping away from the business, where it shows available hours, we may find that set to no. If available hours is set to yes, you'll see a small explanation when hovering over, but available hours would indicate that this overhead activity would be used in the calculation of our utilization rate. We'll also see below with the activity list. The activity list is intended to encompass the activities. We may refer to them as the jobs or the tasks logged against projects and phases. This left column, these are the options your team will see when using timesheets within Monograph. We encourage having a combination of billable and non-billable timesheet activities, so when you're reviewing certain reports, such as our time log, you can filter between billable and non-billable at the project level. You can also enable this toggle. This will basically require the team, when they start using timesheets in Monograph, before they can add hours to a project, they have to select one of these items. Same thing with their timesheet notes. You can also standardize if the team should provide timesheet notes. If your timesheet notes are used in a client-facing capacity, maybe we have to show work for hourly services, that's where you can include a reminder and provide a format of how our notes should be provided. Shifting underneath to the second section within app defaults, within project management. You want to go ahead and personalize or include project categories. The intention with project categories is that these can be used as tags, labels, hashtags, or basically filter options. When you build out projects in Monograph, you can apply multiple categories. It's very helpful for sorting and filtering within other parts of the app. We may find categories used in a variety of ways. Maybe it's based on a project type, such as hospitality, institutional, landscape, residential. May also find categories used on a location basis. So if you have projects in different cities or states, you just have a few examples over here. And again, when you build the project, you can apply multiple of these tags. So if we have a mixed-use project in New York versus a residential project in North Carolina, you can certainly get as granular as you'd like. Underneath, we'll see our phase types and our consultant types. You want to come in and review your phase types. These are intended to reflect the steps or the process throughout our projects. We understand everyone has different terminology or language used for their workflows. This is where we can go ahead and standardize our phase types that will be available to us when we begin building out projects. You can modify, remove, or create new ones as you see fit. Similar here with our consultant types. So when you manage or invoice for consultant services, this will help show, if you display that fee on the invoice, how it appears to your client. It's also used in the consultant's directory. When you're filling it out, you'll want to go ahead and select a consultant type. Should you have a markup on your consultant services when invoicing, you can also standardize that right here as well. The markup can be adjusted on the project level, so if we charge a standard 10% markup, but maybe that's higher or lower on specific projects, you're able to do so. And then our last section within app defaults will be invoicing and expenses. This is where you can actually create custom invoice or payment terms. If you use our QuickBooks Online integration, Monograph will import your invoice terms, which are managed and created from QBO. Expense categories. We also have the ability, we have a few examples here, of creating an expense category, and you can standardize a markup if you have it for expenses. You also have the ability to establish expense rates. I could create a new one over here if I charge a certain amount for each sheet when it comes to printing. I also have an example over here for mileage. I can actually go ahead, I have it associated with my mileage expense category. I can actually provide the mileage rate. So you'll definitely want to go through and make sure that your expense categories and your expense rates are established. You also have the ability to add new tax rates. Should you use the QuickBooks Online integration, Monograph will pull in or import your tax rates created in QuickBooks Online. And lastly, our invoice footer. We just want to have a standard footer across all of our invoices. May recommend to just keep it as a one-liner or two-liners. If it's multiple lines of text, that may not always appear as clean. So you definitely want to come in, take a look at app defaults, explore all the customizables, and really make sure this is set to your liking. It's not showing on our screen, but there is an option in the middle that shows QuickBooks settings. that is where you can connect your QuickBooks Online account to Monograph, and you have the ability to import information into your directory, such as our consultants and our clients. The QuickBooks Online integration also allows you to determine when you're billing for your phase types, which QuickBooks products and services they should be associated with. When billing, should you send that invoice from Monograph to QBO? You also have the ability to send expenses and import costs for projects. We have an on-demand webinar that shows how to connect, set up, and see how information appears in QuickBooks Online. If you need to access that webinar, please let us know, and your launch manager can send that to you. Next, we'll see billable rates. This is where we'll establish the roles and the billable rates when we begin to build out projects. You can click on Learn More. This will take you to our Learning Center, the video walkthrough, and suggested practices. We may recommend, perhaps, modifying or working off of the existing roles first. If I don't have an intern, but an associate, I can rename that quickly over here if I needed to. If we were to create a new role, I'll go ahead and have an example for a senior project manager. Once you provide that information for the role, this is where we can create multiple billable rates associated with the role. Maybe we have a default billable rate, and if you offer a discounted or a friends and family rate, you can do so as well. We may find different billable rates created for different instances. Perhaps there is a blended rate, or a pro bono rate, or a luxury rate, or a government rate. If you need to add a past billable rate in the Monograph, maybe you have billable rates from 2 or 3 years ago that are still being honored, it should be created as its own rate table. Once we hit save, I can scroll down. I'll see the billable rate options created for our new senior project manager role. And within these billable rate tables that we see here, I'll click on default, for example. If we already know that, let's say next year or in 2025, that our billable rate will increase, we can schedule out a rate change. So if I know, for example, maybe this billable rate will go up starting on January 1st, go ahead and save it, and this is how we'll have that rate increase scheduled in the system. Again, you'll definitely want to click on Learn More to review suggested practices for setting up your roles and billable rates. If you have further questions, please reach out, let your launch manager know. Next, we'll see our permissions. This is where admins can manage the permissions or the level of access that each user has to Monograph. We'll see here first, admin. This is intended to be our central or our core policy. So admin, we are unable to rename or remove. However, we have some examples here, associate, project designer, and PM. When we click on edit permissions, this is where you can certainly rename the policy. We may find these structured differently Perhaps the policies are based on roles or titles within your firm. We may also find level 1, 2, 3, bronze, silver, gold, or even admin, non-admin. So you can structure the permission policies as you see fit. At the top right corner, we can duplicate or remove the policy. And when it comes to our permission toggles over here, your launch manager can provide a full glossary of the permissions and the level of information provides access to. Many of these sections are in line with our main menu, starting with time tracking, view, edit, all timesheets. This is referring to all users in the system. Manage time off. If we'd like to give a user the ability to view or approve time off requests, perhaps this is a HR staff member, we can set that here. Within the project planning section, this correlates with what a user is able to do with projects. Many of these toggles may be straightforward when it comes to creating, viewing, removing projects. We do like to highlight for admins that the toggles edit projects, whether that is edit assign or edit all projects, that will give a user visibility into the project timelines, budgets, and financials, such as the billable rates and budget information. This is intentional because we want Monograph to be a tool that PMs can use to make better informed decisions. So admins, please be aware that the Edit Projects toggle will give a user access and the ability to adjust the project timelines, budgets, and role assignments. We'll also see permission toggles related to our invoicing. For client management, this is referring to the directory. Within our client directory, we can decide if we need to view client information or be able to update it. Staffing is referring to the staffing feature. Again, this is the ability to make adjustments within staffing. Reports, when we're referring to financial reports within the Reports tab, this is reports such as our projects report, our profit forecast reports, and our team reports. This is referencing to within the Reports tab, our expenses report, our team activity, even our team forecast. So you can toggle those as you see fit. Then the last group of permissions we'll see, team management, consultant management. This relates back to the directory, being able to manage the team or even update that compensation. Same with the consultants management. We may need the team to view vendor information, and you can decide if they can update that. And then lastly, the ability to access our settings, and then being able to send information to QuickBooks Online if the integration is enabled. Again, please let your launch manager know, and we can provide a full glossary or permissions definitions of each toggle. We'll shift back to our dashboard, and that is everything for our tech setup walkthrough. To recap, you want to come in, fill out your directory, make sure the default role compensation is provided for your team. Be sure to fill out your consultants directory with those vendors or sub-consultants. That's going to be key for when we set up projects or even want to upload consultant bills. You can also fill out the clients as well and really come into your settings and personalize this to your liking. Make sure that things look good within the organization tab. View the different areas of app defaults. Again, you can connect to QuickBooks Online and let us know if you need to see our webinar on how to get that set up. and establish your billable rates and permissions. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to your launch manager. Thank you so much for taking the time to join our tech setup. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
All right. So we were